What do you do when a stranger slaps you in the face and calls you a threat, just for standing outside a store? You won't believe how her quiet defiance turned the entire courtroom silent. Thanks for listening. Like, comment, subscribe. I was just trying to get home. It had been a long day, a double shift at the diner, my legs aching, my back tight, and the inside of my sneakers sticky with something sweet I couldn't even identify anymore. My only goal was simple: get my prescription, catch my Uber, and collapse on my couch with a blanket and maybe a half-watched rerun of that court show my aunt likes. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the concrete as I stood outside the pharmacy in Oak Ridge, one of those nice neighborhoods that made you feel watched even if no one said a word. I glanced at my phone. The Uber app was still loading. Still searching. Still making me wait. I adjusted the strap of my tote bag and held onto the small pharmacy bag I just picked up: cough syrup, some vitamins, and breath mints I didn't really need but bought out of habit. Then I heard it. The honk was sharp, aggressive, not a casual "hey," but the kind of sound someone uses to pick a fight. A silver sedan swerved up toward the curb just a few feet from me, the driver's window already rolling down before the car even came to a full stop. "You there?" the man shouted. I looked up, surprised, then glanced behind me, thinking he might be talking to someone else. But there was no one else. "Yeah, you," he snapped again. "What are you doing here?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" He leaned out of the car now, his face already flushed red, his body stiff like someone who'd been gripping the steering wheel too tight. "Standing around, looking in cars. What are you up to?" My stomach dropped. I'd heard that tone before. The assumption baked into it. Like I was some kind of threat by default. "I'm just waiting for my Uber," I said, keeping my voice steady. He scoffed and pulled the car closer to the curb, dangerously close. I took a half step back. He was now so close that the side mirror nearly kissed the fire hydrant. He said, loud and sarcastic. "That's what they all say." I stiffened. "Sir, I haven't touched anything. I just came out of the pharmacy. I'm not bothering anyone." He opened the car door and stepped out, slamming it hard enough to make me flinch. Tall. Broad. White. Late 50s. Angry as hell and marching toward me like he owned the street. Every instinct in my body told me to move, but I held my ground. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I kept my hands visible, fingers slightly raised, not in surrender, but in awareness. "In defense, you people think you can just loiter around and no one's gonna say anything," he hissed. "I saw you sneaking around that SUV over there." My heart hammered. "That's my neighbor's car. I walked by it. That's it." He stepped closer. Way too close that I could smell the heat on his breath, something bitter, like coffee left out too long. His eyes locked on mine with pure contempt. "You people always have an excuse," he spat. "You think this is your neighborhood? You don't belong here." There it was. "You people." I'd heard it before, not always directly, but always clearly. The sting of it landed harder than most slurs. It wasn't just racist. It was erasure. Like my existence here, in this neighborhood, on this block, in this skin, was something I needed to justify. I tried to calm the fire inside me. I took a slow breath and said, "I live here. I've lived here for 4 years. I'm just waiting for a ride." "You expect me to believe that?" he snapped. "You were casing that car. Probably trying to see if it was unlocked." My voice caught. "That's insane. You're making things up." He laughed, cold and triumphant. Like he'd just caught someone in a lie. "Of course you'll deny it. You people always do. Then you act like victims." I clenched my fists, but kept them at my sides. "You're profiling me." He leaned in, voice dripping with venom. "I'm calling the cops." "For what?" I asked, my voice shaking now. "For standing still." "For acting suspicious," he said, pulling out his phone. I felt my blood pulse in my ears. I glanced at my screen again. The Uber was now 2 minutes away. "I'm not going anywhere," I said louder, hoping others nearby could hear. "I haven't done anything." He narrowed his eyes. What did you say? You're harassing me, I said. Because I'm black. That's when something in him changed, like I'd crossed a line he believed I wasn't allowed to touch. His whole body tightened. His hands still held his phone, but his attention was no longer on calling anyone. Then it happened. His arm swung with no warning, his hand collided with my face, hard. A crack echoed across the sidewalk as pain exploded across my cheek. For a second, the world spun. My pharmacy bag dropped, pills and paper scattering across the pavement. I staggered back, stunned and silent. People gasped. Someone shouted. I heard a phone camera click, the faint voice of a woman whispering, "Did he just hit her?" I touched my cheek. It burned, and then I looked at him. That he was standing there, smug, proud, breathing heavy like he'd done something noble, and I snapped, without thinking, without planning. I raised my arm and slapped him across the face, not with rage. Not with fury. But with a force born of clarity. Of boundaries being drawn. Of survival. His head jerked to the side. His mouth dropped open in shock. I don't think he believed someone like me, a woman, a black woman, would dare to retaliate, and yet I did. For a few seconds after I slapped him, time felt like it stood still. The sting in my hand told me it was real. The shocked, twisted expression on his face confirmed it. I'd done it. I'd broken the rule I'd lived by so long: don't escalate. Don't give them more reason. Don't become the thing they expect you to be. But I wasn't becoming anything. I was reclaiming myself. That I didn't hit him to punish him. I hit him because he had crossed a line so violently that silence would have been a surrender. And I wasn't about to give him that satisfaction. The man, Charles, though I didn't know his name yet, took a shaky step back, blinking in disbelief. One hand shot up to his cheek where I'd struck him. His eyes were wild now, but not from pain. From indignation. He couldn't process that someone like me had dared to touch him back. "You," he sputtered. "How dare you touch me?" I didn't move. My body was buzzing, but I stood rooted. My heart raced in my chest, but I was done shrinking. I kept my shoulders square, my back straight. "You assaulted me," I said quietly. I defended myself. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out at first. Then the shouting started. "She hit me," he barked at the gathering crowd. "This woman just attacked me." A few people nearby flinched. Some had their phones out. I saw one woman, maybe early 30s, in gym clothes, still recording. Another man had stopped mid-step and was dialing someone, maybe the police. Charles looked around and realized he didn't have the control he thought he did. This wasn't a dark alley. This was broad daylight. Witnesses. Footage. Evidence. "She's dangerous," he shouted, waving his arms. "You all saw her. She's crazy." I stepped toward the woman who was recording. "Please keep filming," I said. "I'm calling the police." She nodded. "I got the whole thing." "Him too." My fingers were trembling slightly, but I unlocked my phone and dialed 911. My voice was flat, automatic, but firm. "I'm reporting an assault," I told the dispatcher. "A man struck me in the face outside the pharmacy on Oak Ridge and 12th. I struck him back in self-defense. There are witnesses. I'd like officers on the scene." I gave my name, my location, my description. And I stood my ground. Charles was still pacing, shouting things half coherent. "I'm the victim here. She attacked me." He pointed at his cheek like it proved something, but no one seemed to be buying it. You could feel the shift in the air. The control he tried to assert was slipping. A few moments later, red and blue lights lit up the end of the street. 2 police cruisers pulled up fast, officers stepping out, one male, one female, and immediately moving to separate us. "Ma'am, step over here please," the female officer said gently, guiding me a few feet away from the crowd. "Are you injured?" "My face hurts," I replied. "He slapped me. Hard." "Did you strike him?" "Yes," I said. "After he hit me." She nodded. "Okay. Start from the beginning." I told her everything. From the moment I left the pharmacy. The way he honked. The things he said. How he approached me, accused me of trying to steal. How he called me, "you people." How he got in my space. And how he struck me without warning that I could hear him ranting behind me as the other officer questioned him. His voice was louder now, but shakier. "She came at me. I felt threatened." "Liar," she was yelling. She was aggressive. "Projection, I was just trying to call the police." He wasn't. The woman officer listening to me kept a calm face. But she asked pointed questions. Specific ones. She was watching me closely, and I could tell she was sorting facts from performance. I just kept answering with honesty. "Were there witnesses?" "Yes. Several. One of them has video." She nodded. "We'll talk to them." I stood quietly as they moved between witnesses, collecting footage and accounts. A few people had already offered to give statements. That helped ease something tight in my chest. I wasn't alone. Not anymore. After about 20 minutes, the officers regrouped. The female officer approached me again. "We've gathered statements and footage," she said. "It's consistent with what you described. He struck you first. Then you responded. That aligns with self-defense." I nodded, silent. "He's saying you damaged his car and provoked him." My eyebrows shot up. "His car? I didn't go near it. I never even moved from where I was standing." "You can check the footage." "We will," she said. "Do you want to press charges?" "Yes," I replied without hesitation. "For the assault. And I'd like to document this officially." She pulled out a clipboard. "Let's get the paperwork started. And if anything else happens, if he retaliates or approaches you again, call us immediately." I nodded again, still feeling that electric current buzzing under my skin. I wasn't used to being believed this quickly. It felt strange. But right when I looked over toward him, Charles had gone silent. He stood stiffly beside his car, arms crossed, face pale. The officers were still speaking to him, but it was clear the tide had turned, that he was on the defensive now, and I wasn't afraid anymore. As I finished signing the preliminary report, the officer gave me a card with the case number. "We'll assign a detective to this," she said. "If you have any evidence, like texts, follow-ups, anything else, bring it in." I thanked her. She offered a short nod, then added, "You did the right thing." I held on to that as I walked toward the edge of the lot, the pharmacy bag now tucked under my arm again, and the Uber driver from earlier finally arriving down the block. But I didn't get in just yet. That I had one more thing to check. That I walked slowly down the sidewalk toward where I had parked my car earlier that day, tucked neatly against the curb under a small tree, and then I saw it. The walk to my car felt longer than usual. There was a tightness in my chest I couldn't shake, like I knew something was wrong before I even saw it. Maybe it was the silence on the street. Maybe it was the memory of the way Charles had looked at me when the police started listening to me instead of him. Like he'd lost control, and couldn't stand it. And then I saw the damage. 3 long, deliberate scratches ran across the passenger side of my Honda. Deep ones. Not the kind you get from brushing up against a bush or someone opening their car door too wide. These were angry, exact, like someone had taken keys or something sharp and carved a message into the paint. That I stopped in my tracks. My heart dropped into my stomach. This wasn't random. This wasn't a coincidence. That I didn't need anyone to tell me who did it. That I stood there for a moment, just breathing, trying to absorb what I was seeing. The sun was starting to set, and the fading light made the scratches look even deeper, like open wounds across the silver body of my car. It wasn't just vandalism. It was retaliation. My jaw tightened. I could still feel the sting on my cheek from his hand. But this was something else. A message. He wanted to mark me. To remind me that even if I stood up for myself, even if the police believed me, even if people filmed the truth, he still had the power to hurt me. But he was wrong. That I pulled out my phone and dialed the non-emergency police line. "This is Tasha Collins," I said. "I need to report an act of vandalism. I filed an assault complaint earlier today, and I believe this is connected." The dispatcher was calm. Professional. Told me officers would be dispatched. By the time the patrol car arrived, My Uber had come and gone. The driver had rolled down his window and asked if I was okay. I waved him off with a weak smile that I wasn't okay, but I wasn't running either. Two new officers pulled up. One of them recognized me from earlier and gave me a grim look as he stepped out of the cruiser. He didn't waste any time, did he? He said, walking up to the car. No, I said flatly. He knew I'd be busy talking to you all. He took advantage of that. The officer crouched near the scratches, ran a hand just above the paint without touching it. This was deliberate. I nodded. He probably circled back the minute you were occupied. We'll file this as property damage connected to the original incident, he said. If we can find footage or a witness, it'll strengthen the case. I could feel myself starting to shake. Not out of fear, out of frustration. Out of disbelief that he could be so brazen. That someone could assault me in public, lie to the police, vandalize my car, and still act like he was in the right. He said I damaged his car, I muttered, half to myself. The officer looked up at me. What? In his statement, I said. He told your colleague I damaged his vehicle. Meanwhile, he's out here literally keying mine. The officer shook his head. We see this kind of thing more than you'd think. Escalation. Control. Especially when they don't expect pushback. I clenched my fists. It's not even about the car, I said. I mean, it is. This car took me 5 years to pay off, but it's the message behind it. He wants to remind me I'm small. The officer was quiet for a moment, then said, Do you want to press additional charges? Yes, I said immediately. I want to press charges for both the assault and the vandalism. I'm not letting this go. He gave a small nod. We'll attach everything to your original report. I'll also file an official property damage report now. You'll get a copy. As he worked, I stood there silently, arms crossed, my breath slowly calming. At some point, I looked back toward the street, and that's when I saw him, Charles. That he was sitting in his car, parked down the block, just far enough away to not be part of the scene, but close enough to watch everything that he wasn't even hiding. He looked me straight in the eye. And then, he smiled, not big. Just a tight-lipped, smug, calculated smile, like he was daring me to do something about it. My stomach turned, but I didn't look away. I met his gaze and didn't blink. You want me to be afraid? I thought that you're going to be disappointed. That he finally drove off when the officer started taking photos of the damage. I didn't say anything about having seen him, there was no point. Not yet. But I made a mental note. After the report was completed, the officer handed me a card with a new case number and the same advice I'd been given earlier. Save everything, stay alert, and cooperate with the assigned detective. As I got into the driver's seat and closed the door, I sat there for a minute. My hand was still on the steering wheel, but I didn't turn the key. This wasn't just a bad day anymore, this was a battle, and it wasn't over. 2 days after the attack, I found myself sitting in a beige-walled room inside the Oak Ridge precinct. The light above me buzzed faintly, and the metal chair beneath me was cold, unforgiving. There wasn't much on the walls, a faded calendar, a motivational poster no one read, and the ticking of a clock that made every second feel heavier. A detective named Nia Freeman sat across from me, a tall black woman in her 40s, with clear, watchful eyes and a voice like calm steel. From the moment she introduced herself, I felt something shift. Not comfort, exactly, but safety. Or maybe just the hope that someone might actually listen. I've reviewed the initial reports and the video footage we've received, she said, flipping open a folder with my name printed neatly at the top. But I need your version, fully and clearly. Start from the beginning. So I did that. I told her about the evening, the shift I'd worked, the trip to the pharmacy, the way Charles had pulled up and started shouting before I could even take a breath. I described the accusation, the words he used, "You people, you don't belong here," and the way he stepped into my space like I didn't deserve to occupy it. That I told her about the slap. The impact. The way my face burned afterward. And then, my response, a single strike back. Not to harm him. Just to say, you don't get to hit me and walk away proud. That I told her everything. Nia didn't interrupt. She wrote in silence, only glancing up to ask a few clarifying questions. She didn't doubt. She didn't press. She just listened. When I finally finished, she leaned back slightly, tapping her pen against the folder. "You were very clear," she said. "And consistent with the witness statements and videos." That brought me a small wave of relief, but, she added, "Charles Kent has also filed a countercomplaint." I sat up straighter. "Of course he has. He claims you were the aggressor," she said. "That you approached his vehicle, began yelling, and struck him without provocation." I actually laughed. It wasn't bitter, just exhausted. "He's lying. And he knows he's lying." "I know," Nia said. "But that doesn't mean he won't try to convince others." I looked down at the table. "He said those things to the police?" "Officially?" "He did. His lawyer submitted a statement yesterday as well. He's building a narrative that he was defending himself from a perceived threat." "A threat?" I repeated. "He called me a threat?" She nodded slowly. "Unfortunately, that word gets used too often, especially when it comes to black women standing their ground." I felt my jaw tighten. So now I'm not just the angry black woman. I'm a threat. "That's how he wants it framed," she said. "But we have footage. Witnesses. Physical evidence." I closed my eyes for a moment. I felt the fury rising again, not just at him, but at how predictable this all was. How often this happened. How easy it was for someone like him to flip the story and make himself the victim. "He keyed my car," I said. "After the police let him walk away, he vandalized my property and then sat in his car watching me file the report like it was all entertainment." "I saw that report," Nia said. "And the photos. The scratches were deep. Precise. Intentional. I want every part of this documented," I told her. "Every statement, every video, every image. I want a file so solid it snaps if he tries to bend it." She gave me a long, approving look. That's the right attitude. Over the next hour, I sat with her and one of the legal clerks while we formalized my statement. Every word mattered now. I described everything in clear detail, from the language Charles used, to his physical proximity, to the fact that I hadn't moved a single step toward him before he hit me. When I signed the final page, my hand was stiff. But my resolve was stronger than ever. "Before I left, Nia said, if this goes to court, and I believe it will, are you prepared to testify?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Good. You'll be contacted by the prosecutor's office. They'll walk you through the process." I stood and thanked her. Before I could leave, she added something quietly. "You're not just helping yourself," she said. "You're setting a precedent. People like him count on silence." Outside, the sun had dipped low behind the buildings, casting the streets in warm gold. I walked toward my car slowly, letting the breeze hit my face. It still ached, faintly, but enough to remind me this wasn't over. That I got in and sat behind the wheel for a moment before starting the engine. That he twisted everything. That he lied to the police. That he tried to humiliate me, and he damaged my property as a parting shot, but he didn't break me. That was the mistake he made. The courtroom was cold, not just from the air conditioning, but from the weight of everything: the stairs, the silence, the tension. I sat at the front beside my attorney, Dana Shore, a woman with a calm fire in her voice. Her confidence anchored me. I kept my eyes on the wooden table in front of me, hands clasped, back straight, reminding myself I belonged here. I deserved to be here. Across the room sat Charles Kent. That he didn't look like the man who'd slapped me in public anymore. He didn't look smug or loud. He looked tight, pale, and cornered. Maybe it was the suit that didn't fit quite right, or the way he avoided eye contact, but he looked smaller than I remembered. Smaller than the man who had grinned at me while my car sat keyed and bleeding. The judge entered. The bailiff gave instructions. I barely registered it. This was it. The trial began with opening statements. Dana stood and spoke with quiet precision, every word deliberate, measured, undeniable. "This is a case about power and perception," she said. "About a woman who was assaulted in public and stood up for herself. Ms. Collins didn't choose conflict, it was brought to her." When Charles's lawyer got up, I braced myself that he painted Charles as a family man. A neighbor who was on edge due to recent break-ins in the area. He said Charles feared for his safety when he saw me near the pharmacy. That he had acted impulsively, not maliciously. He never used the word racism. He didn't have to. It hovered there, just under the surface, like a quiet poison. Then came the video's point: 3 different angles. 3 different witnesses. There I was, standing still. Charles stepping toward me. His voice rising. His finger jabbing. You people. The slap. My head turning from the impact, then, my hand returning the favor. The courtroom was dead quiet as it played. A few jurors shifted uncomfortably. One of them blinked slowly, her expression blank but unsettled. When the video ended, I felt the silence settle into my bones. No commentary needed. The truth had played itself. Next came witness testimonies. 2 women who'd seen it all, one of whom had recorded the footage. They answered confidently, describing how Charles had been aggressive from the start. Then it was my turn. I walked to the stand and sat, hands folded, heart pounding. The oath felt heavier than it should have. I looked at the jury, 12 strangers who now held my dignity in their hands, and then I spoke. I told them everything. From the moment I left work that night to the moment Charles struck me. I told them how I'd stood on a sidewalk in a neighborhood I lived in. How he pulled up, how his words shifted from rude to racist within seconds. How I tried to de-escalate. How he slapped me without warning. I didn't retaliate out of anger, I said. I didn't want to fight. I just couldn't stand there and take it. I needed him to know he couldn't hit me and walk away proud. When Dana asked how it made me feel, I hesitated. But then I said the truth. It made me feel erased. Like I wasn't a person in his eyes. Just an inconvenience he wanted to push aside. The defense tried to rattle me in cross-examination. Is it true you raised your voice? Yes, I answered. After he accused me of being a criminal for standing still. Could you have walked away? I tried. He blocked me. Did you hit him? Yes. After he slapped me. Could your slap be considered aggressive? No. It was instinct. And it was nothing compared to his. He paused, flipping through papers. Did you threaten him? No. I asked him to leave me alone. The questioning stopped there. After closing statements, Dana reinforcing the facts, the defense pleading for understanding, the jury was sent to deliberate. That hour was the longest of my life. I sat in silence. I didn't speak. Didn't move. I tried not to hope too much. I'd seen too many verdicts go the wrong way, but when the jury returned and the foreman stood up, I stopped breathing. On the count of assault, he said, we find the defendant, Charles Kent, guilty. On the count of property damage, guilty. I exhaled slowly. The release was so quiet it felt like it echoed. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just sat there and let the weight start to shift. I wasn't erased. I wasn't silenced. He'd been found guilty. On the record. In front of witnesses. In a courtroom where the truth had finally won. Charles didn't move. His face was pale, blank. His lawyer patted his arm, but he didn't even blink. The judge thanked the jury and scheduled sentencing for the following month. As we stood to leave, I felt Dana's hand on my shoulder, firm and steady. You did it, she said. Outside the courthouse, a few reporters waited. I didn't stop. I didn't need to be a headline. I just needed peace. But just as I reached the sidewalk, a young woman approached me. She looked about 20, headphones around her neck, eyes red. Thank you, she whispered. For speaking up. For fighting. I saw the video, and I just wanted to say you're not alone. That's when the tears finally came, not from pain. From connection. From knowing that what I did, what I survived, wasn't just for me. Weeks later, the judge sentenced Charles Kent to 90 days in county jail, restitution for my car repairs, and mandatory counseling. The ruling was clear. What he did had consequences, but real justice, that lived in moments that came after. And the way I walked through my neighborhood with my head higher. And the way I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't feel small. And the way women reached out to me and said, me too. My car has been fixed, but I still remember the scratches. Not because they hurt, but because they were proof of what hate looks like when it thinks no one is watching, but people were watching, and now I speak louder that I attend meetings. I work with local organizations that teach women, especially Black women, how to advocate for themselves legally. I've shared my story in community groups, in small schools, in quiet church basements, and every time I do, I remember that night, the slap, the shame, and then, the moment I hit back, not just with my hand, with my truth, with my voice, with the full force of a woman who refuses to disappear, and I will never go silent again.